Hey everyone, we are going to talk about brand today. Does everyone like brand? Does everyone know what brand awareness is? What are your favorite brands? Brand is like one of those like mystical like black magic things where it's like you can't really measure it. You can't really see it, but it's obviously there.
Yeah.
Something called like a halo effect where it like trickles down and benefits you on the digital side, it benefits you on the storefront. So we're going to dive into that a little bit today with me and Andrew and talking about brand building, how you kind of establish it, maybe some tips and tricks on how you try and build it, and give you some reasons why you should be building along the way and not 10 years into your business and go, oh man, we should start building brand. So what is kind of step one, Andrew, for building a brand? What do you think?
Well, I'm going to start this off with a disclaimer.
Yes. Okay.
That after you listen to this podcast and you put in like an hour of work, you haven't built your brand, and it's not really something that happens overnight. And it's something you just continually work towards your whole time of having a business. So don't feel, no matter what spot you are along your journey, don't feel like you're behind or you're done.
Or ahead.
Yeah.
Right?
It's just, it's a constant thing that you do. So yeah, just to set the record straight and let everyone know that you just keep on working.
Keep on keeping on.
And really quick, just before we get started on like how you should create it, I think a good way to look at it is that like your brand is your reputation and encompasses every type of touch that a customer or a potential customer might have with you. So it's your logo, it's your website, it's your someone driving a company vehicle and not flipping people off. There's just like so many factors. So it's really just every interaction that people have with you, IRL, in real life, as the kids say, digitally, everywhere. So just to get everyone kind of on the same page.
Background.
And I think how to start depends on where you are in your business. If you're an established business, it's probably looking throughout everything you've done and seeing what you have, what you don't have, and kind of a checklist of things that might be missing or need help. And when you're doing that kind of thing, I think it's important to look at a lot of different factors, but the biggest one for me is consistency. And are you portraying your company and your reputation the same throughout every place you're in, right? And I think you can think about it like as a person. Joe and I are like pretty laid back people. If we came to the office tomorrow in like tuxes, people are going to be confused about who we are and our reputation. And so you can really think of branding like in that small of a sense, right? It's like, what are we known for and what do we want to show? So to get started is either look at what you've done, see if it needs help. And maybe you've been doing a really great job and everything's consistent and you're gradually growing this brand without knowing. Or you might look and go, oh, we like spell our name differently in different places, or we have different name. Like there's lots of different inconsistencies that can happen. If you're starting out new, you look at kind of those same factors again, and start like a detailed list of like, here's how we spell our name. Here's how we shorten it. Here's, when you go to like a big company, they send you like a whole brand guidelines that has all these kind of things in it. But yeah, to get started, it's really kind of deciding those key things and how you want them to look and feel.
I love it. Yeah, like a little quick audit. And it can help, like Andrew said, if you've been doing this for a long time, it can help if you put like your customer journey on the board and put it in buckets. Like, how are they interacting with your brand? So if you're like a local services company, it could be like, the first interaction is our Google My Business page, which is reviews, which we talked about a couple episodes ago. And how are we showing up there? And you can have like some strategies. And then, the next path is Well, they interact with our front desk person. Well, how do we interact with them? Do we have a good attitude? Are we providing them with an opportunity for an appointment? Are we saying thank you for your business? And then it's obviously the service part, and then it's after the service. So like there's, really quick 4 buckets. There's obviously a lot more, but it can help to have a strategy on each of those versus like thinking about brand, which is so massive. You can just focus it narrowly and think of how people are interacting with you and then how you can improve each one of those. And with that is like, you can't, how do you eat a whale? One bite at a time. You don't do it all at once. So one quarter, maybe you're focusing on that Google My Business page and how you show up on reviews. Or, if you're a tech company, like how your product onboarding is with emails and how quickly people are able to start getting to value with your product. So putting a focus on those and then tying it back to your core values and things we've talked about with your business plan can really be a great starting point. Step 2.
Well, step 2. Definitely.
Step 1 might take like a year, by the way.
Yeah, I think finding places to improve or things,
continue.
Things that need to kind of be enhanced a little bit. I wrote an ebook a while ago for law firms about branding and gave them some like tips and tricks. And one of them was just like Google yourself, see what comes up. You can find out a lot about your brand there. But yeah, really, once you've kind of identified some places that you want to work on or that need work, it's really setting up that framework to make sure it's finished and that it like keeps going. And I think there's a lot of different ways that you can look at your brand. Like Joe kind of talked about a lot of those, like there's a lot of physical but digital assets like your reviews or your logo, your website. There's also things like how your employees talk about you, how your current or past customers talk about you, which has also the reviews part. But one thing that I always think of that really affects your brand is like, are your technicians or your employees, whatever, are they out at lunch talking about like how bad of a company you are or like all these problems that they could be touting, right? So your brand is all of those digital and physical assets, but also it's the people who work for you and how they feel about your company and what you're doing that also play like a really big role. And like we've said a couple times on this podcast, like brand is a big thing and it's very like ominous and just is a cloud in the sky essentially. So there's a lot of different things that you don't need to worry about or you could worry about. It all depends on like where your business is, who your customer is, and that kind of thing. But it really is taking a look at all of those aspects and kind of understanding how people represent your company, how they talk about your company, and making sure that they're getting the right impression, especially like in our last episode, we talked about core values and a mission statement and that kind of thing. That's a good way to gauge if those are working too, is like, how are people talking about you and how do they see your brand? So those are great things to kind of look at. So what else should people be aware of?
Yeah, I mean, internal is great. I hadn't even thought of that initially, but yeah, like your internal brand is huge. And especially as you get larger as a company, it's something that's harder to contain. You know, when it's such a one office with 10 employees, like it's pretty easy to contain the chatter that's going on. But when you have 5 offices and 50 employees, it's a little bit harder. So you need to make sure you have a process in place there to kind of make sure your brand ambassadors, which are your employees, are showing up well. I think this is kind of like the fuzzy part, but like design and colors matter. Like think of Coke. Like what do you think of when you think of Coke? You probably think of like the iconic red, and like they have a trademark on their red for Coke. No one else can use that red.
and or maybe you think of like Apple and like the white earbuds, which were like a huge branding play for them when they first came out with the iPhone, that they came out with these white earbuds, which hadn't really been done before, but was very on brand for them since they had done a lot of other white things, and it kind of like matched with their brand. So like coming up with the right colors, the right design, don't have like your high school kid that's a graphic design student that's 16, like design your logo. You can get a logo and design done for pretty cheaply by like good experts. It's worth investing there, especially if you're going to put that on billboards, on your trucks, on in your building, on your website. Like, invest a little bit of money there and make sure it's right. And you should probably try and plan on that being your logo or colors for a little while. You don't want to be changing every year. Maybe every 10 years you'll see, like, I think of Instagram, like they've changed their logo quite a few times or their app. So like you don't want to do refreshes, but not too far diverted from who you are.
Yeah. You don't want to confuse people in any stage of the game, right? But like throwing out a new logo or changing something can make people confused on if they're talking to the right person, they're calling the right person. That's why I think consistency is so important when it comes to branding, is that there's so many touch points before someone's probably going to hire you. And if you have like logo 1 on a billboard, but then you have logo 7 on your website, and the person who wants to hire you just remembers the logo from the billboard, they get to your website and go, wait a second, this doesn't look right. This is not familiar to me. And then they go down the line to somewhere else. So like, that's why it's important to kind of use those things, like those visual cues that people are going to remember, to make sure that no matter what stage they like find you again, they know it's you.
And there are those, like we've been talking about, like new businesses and existing businesses. If you're like, have trash reviews, and you're like, okay, you're fed up and you're ready to start over, you can do a rebrand. Like, it happens all the time in tech, in services. It's okay, and it might be the best solution for you. Don't do it lightly, obviously, but if you need just like a complete teardown and you've been doing this for 20 years, do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's an opportunity there to start fresh and develop your core values and like become a new business. But yeah, don't be afraid of that if it is like not salvageable.
Totally. But on the same like count with that, of if you're gonna change your brand, like pick a date.
Yeah.
To say that like after June 1st, we're no longer XYZ, we're ABC, and no one should use XYZ stuff anymore.
Yep.
Throw it all away, have a ceremonial bonfire, whatever you need to do. But like being in limbo just confuses your customer. So you have to just like, rebranding people, companies do it all the time. It's a big undertaking, but if you do it right, it works really well. But one of the things of doing it right is like, okay, we're not this anymore. So
we talked about research, we talked about design. I'd love to kind of put the last little bit into how do you do branding while you're creating leads for your business. It can be hard as like a business owner. Let's say you have, I don't know, $10,000 a month for marketing, maybe high, maybe low, depending on where you are as a business. And like, man, I know I need to do branding, but I need leads. And if I put $5,000 toward brand, like a billboard or display ads or what it might be, digital or magazine or whatever, then I'm not going to have that to spend on like lead generation on Google and Facebook. So how do you kind of do both?
I would argue that you can't do one without the other, and that you need some sort of brand in place if you're going to be spending money on digital, right? Like, I think there's this fine line, and it's a hard line to be on, of like, I want to get leads and I want to put money into like promoting posts or Google ads or etc. But there's also the fact that like those posts, those Google ads need to lead them to something. And those two things need to match up, right? So like if you're spending a ton of money on digital advertising, but your website doesn't work, or it's not branded, it doesn't look good or professional, you're wasting all that money. So I think, one, branding doesn't have to cost you a lot, depending on where you are in your business and where you're located, how you're doing business, etc. Right? It's a lot about just like look and feel and consistency in those kind of like stages. So I think you do both, and you focus on getting those leads. But part of that is the branding and understanding that like those leads can be captured and that they're going to the site to get the information they need, right? Like that's all part of your brand, is communicating with your customers and like sealing the deal. So look at your customer journey before you start spending money and say, is there any spot in this that they're going to stop and go like, wait, is this the same company from the ad I got to like what I'm getting? And if you can confidently move through that journey, knowing that like every touch point is the same vibe and it's the same experience, then I think, yeah, put money towards that stuff. If you're not there and you need help, it might be a good idea to pull back for a month and put that money towards getting it there. Because you can have great results on a sponsored post or Google ads where you're getting tons of traffic, but none of them are converting, and it's probably because somewhere along the way it didn't match up in that expectation.
I love that. Yeah, and you said that earlier too. Like I think the journey is such an important thing to analyze, and we mentioned kind of like those buckets. You know, hopefully you put a little bit of effort into, okay, like where is the bulk of our leads or customers coming from, and you have these kind of like this path that they're coming from, and you know, create a persona like Jane is coming from, you know, she's owns a home and is, you know, coming from this path and ends on this path, and really go have a strong understanding of where they're coming from and each of those touch points. And then you have the data to back it too. So like, you know, we get a good conversion from our billboard, like we get a lot of calls or we get a lot of traffic from this display ad, but no one's converting. So like the first part of your stage is great. The second part is where the leaky funnel is. So go through that path yourself, do a whole bunch of testing, and have family, friends, whatever, employees go through that path and be like, hey, what are we missing here? And maybe it's like Andrew said, there's some brand inconsistency, or there's like a funny hero like picture, or there's some confusion about if they're on the right page. So make it really simple and like always be analyzing each stage of those journeys. And then, you know, you can make some decisions based off of that.
Yeah. It's not a bad idea to like just take a, let's say, quarterly look at that. And like we talked about earlier, like even Googling yourself, like going from if they saw your ad and clicked through and then they went to Google you, right? Like kind of think about how you would look at a company and do the same for you. And you can find some, you know, go find some inconsistencies or like some things that make people question if they should hire you. Another great way that we should probably do a whole podcast about is just like a customer or client survey. You can always ask in those, like, was there anything that gave you pause before you hired us? And you might be able to find some like weird things that you didn't know about that are affecting that tie into your brand.
Yeah, you got to like fill in those assumptions we make, right? Like we make assumptions of how we would perceive something. There's so many different ways. You got to find that majority of people, and like talking with customers is such an important thing for all aspects of your business, but definitely improving your brand and your marketing and lead flow, and always looking for that feedback.
So, building a brand is not just burning money. Find ways that it really supports your lead flow. It improves your lead flow. It makes you come across as professional and strong and a reliable and credible brand. And you'll find that if you put that money in and don't just kind of like create a logo yourself one weekend and you've never used InDesign or Photoshop before, put some money there and it will pay back if you put a consistent focus on it and analyze that journey.
Definitely.
Anything else, Andrew?
I think that's it.
Cool. All right. Thank you all, and get those brands up and running. See ya.